Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this online workshop organised by the International Platform of Insects for Food and Feed. My name is Rose O'Donovan and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of the Brussels-based publication AgriFacts. Well, here we are, yet another webinar instead of meeting face-to-face during these very strange times. To make this virtual gathering a little bit different, we're going to use the Slido app to liven things up and make it as interactive as possible. So I hope you've been up to speed with the tutorial that you've received from the IPIFF colleagues. The theme of today's workshop is circular agriculture, the role of insect farming in connecting local supply chains. And I think you would agree that the debate is particularly timely, given the broader sustainability and climate change agenda, and of course, ongoing discussions on the flagship European Green Deal and Farm to Fork strategy. Now, we have a lot to get through this morning. Before we meet our distinguished guests, I would like to invite IPIFF President, Mr. Antoine Hubert, to say a few words. Antoine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Distinguished officials from European and national associations and institutions, honorable representative of European Stakeholder Association and Academia, dear colleagues from the world of insect farming and dear friends, I have the pleasure today to welcome you to this year's editions of the annual IPIFF workshop entitled Secular Agriculture, the Role of Insect Farming in Connecting Local Supply Chains. As you just said, this event is a special one for two reasons. In a time of a pandemic, we couldn't meet physically, unlike previous IPIFF conferences. However, we are thankful that these restrictions offer us an excellent opportunity to connect with agri-food stakeholders and insect farming enthusiasts from all the corners of the continent and even more different parts of the globe. On the other hand, it's also the first time we are gathering to discuss about one of the pillars of the European Green Deal, namely the farm to fork strategy. And this is a timely chance for us to put on the table sustainable, efficient, and reliable solutions, which will play a constructive role in this post-COVID recovery. A new beginning for people and nature was the theme of this year's EU Green Week. And since this workshop is also a Green Week partner event, it is our responsibility to brainstorm, research, and implement fit-for-purpose answers to today's European and global challenges. How can we feed a growing population without expanding agricultural land? How can insect farming support the transition from linear to circular business models in agriculture? How can the insect contribute to the farm to fork objectives to achieve, for instance, 25% of the EU's agricultural land under organic farming by 2030, and a significant increase in organic agriculture? And most importantly, how can insect farmers support the farm to fork in becoming the global standard for food sustainability? We intend to answer some of this question today, and we will hear from honorable officials of the European institutions, as well as reputable representatives of key stakeholder associations active in Brussels and the EU member states. Because this is the mission of IPIFF and our 70 members since 2015 to consolidate dialogue with EU institutions, to promote shared standards and best practices, and to develop collaborative actions with other EU umbrella associations. So among questions, why is circularity important? It is the view of insect farming community that circularity is key to facilitating the transition towards more sustainable food systems. Presently, the average European generates circa 100 kilograms of food waste per year, while the FAO indicates that 10% of the world populations did not have enough to eat in 2018. These are interlinked matters which we should address in parallel with the greatest challenge of our generations, climate change. Our recent experience in the European insect farming sector is a strong testimony that we can help to tackle this challenge together. Then, how can insects help in the transition towards circular farming practices? Insect farmers rely to a large extent on byproducts from the agri-food chains and former foodstuffs. Such products, as opposed to being downcycled, incinerated, or landfilled, are redirected towards insect farms where they are upcycled into higher value protein-rich insect-based products. Thus, insects contribute to the safe reintroduction of such nutrients in the agri-food chain, in food and feed products, as well as on agricultural land where insect frass improves plant growth and development. It becomes clear that insect farming is the link in the chain which connects stakeholders from various segments, such as food and feed producers, former foodstuff processors, and fisheries and farms. Fish, livestock, or crop farmers have a double role in this process. They can be either rely on insect-based product as an input, or they integrate insect farming along with their practices in order to diversify their farming activities. So why is Europe so important? Almost a decade after the state of insect farming in Europe, in numerous member states of the European Union, insect farming already became a business reality. It is our ambition to strengthen our collaboration with other agri-food stakeholders, and many of you are present here today, and to efficiently address the challenges of our food systems face. To maximize the contribution of insect farming, it is also our responsibility to maintain a closed and transparent dialogue with academia and policymakers, actors who played and will play a constructive role in unlocking the opportunities offered by the EU legislation. To conclude, I wish to personally thank the speakers and panelists today, and each and every one of you for joining us today. I am confident that we will have a constructive dialogue, and I look forward to seeing you again in future IPIFF events, hopefully physically. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antoine. We're actually all hoping for some constructive dialogue today, as this is an area that really seems to form the perfect match with the principles underpinning the European Green Deal. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Sabine Jülicher to deliver her keynote address. Sabine is no stranger to anyone on this webinar. Director in DG Santé, responsible for policies relating to a very wide range of sectors, such as food information and composition, food waste, food processing, technologies, novel foods, biotechnology, pesticides, as well as veterinary medicines and animal nutrition. Sabine holds a veterinary degree from the Free University in Berlin and completed her thesis in microbiology and food safety. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would remind all participants to get your questions through on Slido, the app, and we'll have a chance to get to them in a moment later on. So Sabine, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Rose. Good morning, Antoine. And thank you so much for inviting me to your workshop today. The topic is super interesting, has a lot of potential, and I'm really pleased to be here to share the developments at the European level with all of you. Now, you already spoke about, one of the top Commission priorities, that is the Green Deal. And the Green Deal, I think, is really the overarching theme in this context, because the Green Deal, as you rightly said, and Antoine, is really, how we manage and reduce our impact on the climate in the years to come. I mean, the Green Deal and all the various sub-elements, they are really very ambitious, and the Commission is of the opinion that we need this very ambitious agenda in all areas of human activity, so to say, to make a difference and to really fuel the transition to a more sustainable behavior in all these sectors. And that is energy, that is transport, that is housing. But it is also the way we produce and consume our food. And that was the reason that also the Commission specifically dedicated one of the communications under the Green Deal to the sustainable food system. And that is the Farm to Fork strategy to which you referred. So in a nutshell, also here, I mean, the main objective of that is set out in that strategy is how we can in the shortest time span, and here we are thinking mainly up to 2030. How can we manage the transition to a much more environmentally friendly food system that is providing social aspects, social security, and economic aspects and economic sustainability. So what is very important in that context is that we really have the three pillars of sustainability: economic, social, and environment under one umbrella. This is a priori seems to be quite theoretical, but in practice, and I'm really delighted to talk about the practical example of insect farming and its potential here, because you can then see also the real impact on these three aspects of sustainability. So in the Farm to Fork strategy, we really recognize the role that insect farming can play, and also we made a commitment to really foster the development of alternative feed materials such as insects, in effect to reduce our dependency on critical feed materials such as, for example, soya that we import and where we are not in full control of the growing conditions. We also have kicked off a lot of research under the Horizon Europe program. It's a huge research program, and it seems also in the co-legislation process that this is confirmed. And there are quite a number of research areas really dedicated to insect-based protein production. So the way we see this is, being part of this strategy, being clearly, under the aim of the transition to a more sustainable food system, will help to unlock funds, will help to unlock support. And we see it really also as a transition and recovery from the COVID crisis, and really creating business opportunities. Antoine has already explained, why insect farming is so interesting in the context of sustainability. I mean, in brief, insects are powerful bioconverters, and they have really a low environmental footprint, if I may say. So they have really a lot of potential to help us in our overall food systems to become more sustainable. Antoine, you asked and you said, we really want to support this journey. And I really like your way of putting it, because every sector in the food system has to ask this question: how can we support the transition? What can we do a priori, but also where are our business opportunities? What I would like to describe is really, what the Commission is doing, and what we are working on to help the sector do exactly this. So I think what is very important, that over time we manage to make the entire process from the insect feed to the insect protein marketing, to the dealings with the leftovers, so to say, from insect production, that we make this all economically viable, that we manage to do this in a safe way, and therewith we create business opportunities, we create scale, and we manage to make the entire sector really competitive with the other protein sources that we may want to scale down on. So very briefly concerning authorization of insect processed animal proteins, we have already opened the market for insect proteins as feed for pets and aquaculture species. We are currently working very intensively with the member states to open insect protein for poultry feed and pig feed. It's part of a bit complex package, but nevertheless, we see a lot of opportunity that we come to an opening on these further uses of insect protein very shortly. Another topic, a little bit possibly more complex, is the opening of new substrates for feed for insects. We are really interested in fostering more sustainable insect feed materials. We have committed to that in the Farm to Fork strategy. We also understand where the sector sees the priority, meaning that is to use former food-containing meat or fish as potential new substrates. What we have to reassure us, and I think that is a theme in the entire Farm to Fork strategy, when we go towards more sustainability, we may not lose sight of safety. Under no circumstances may we jeopardize human health or animal health. And that explains that in particular under the new substrates topic, we really have to reassure ourselves, most likely with EFSA opinions, that what we are going to do and what substrates we are going to open for the sector is actually safe. Because in effect, the last thing we can want, all of us, is that we have a safety incident and the sector gets under pressure and under the wrong impression, so to say. Antoine, you already mentioned the insect frass. For us, it is also very important that we open rules for placing on the market of insect frass, that we do this in a harmonized and safe way, and therewith open another economic opportunity to use basically the leftovers from the insect production in an economically and safe and viable way. So the Commission has a proposal. We have launched internal procedures to introduce harmonized rules. So we are working on this as well. This was all in the area of feed. And as I said, the idea is really that we come to an entire process that is economically viable in total and economically viable in its own parts, that is safe, and that in the end can be scaled up to a scale that really makes a difference also in terms of what are the policy objectives under the Green Deal. A quick word on insects as food. Here we have a framework since a couple of years, the Novel Food Framework. It is a framework that we have reformed, that is working well. And I'm really pleased to say that we have, from the insect industry that is very active as in the sector of insects for food, we have quite a number of applications already under this regime. Part of them are currently reviewed by EFSA. And the way I understand is that even before the end of this year, we can expect the first outcomes of the EFSA evaluation process, meaning opening the door for authorization of insects, whole insects as well, for food production. So in closing, I would really like to say the Commission has recognized the full potential of the sector, including up and downstream. We are doing a lot to alleviate regulatory hurdles, if I may call them that way, and to open pathways also from the regulatory and legal framework. We are fostering research, and we really wish to do this in a safe manner, which then also allows upscaling and use of insect proteins, both in food and feed, for really the years to come in a very sustainable way. So I would like to stop here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion and the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sabina. You mentioned one or two regulatory changes that are in the pipeline that might facilitate the development of insect farming and, as you call them, alternative feed materials. Could you be more specific on timing? Should we put the beginning of 2021 in our diaries, or what do you see in terms of the timeline there?
Well, the timeline, I mean, what you have to realize and recognize is that we have we are in the discussion with member states on most of these measures, and or in the planning stage. So where we are really close to an agreement with the member states is really opening an authorization the use of processed animal proteins for pig and poultry. As I said, this is under intense discussion with the member states. It's part of a larger package. I think the insect part is the less controversial one. There are other parts that are, you know, a little bit more controversial. But I'd say we are very, very hopeful that we can put the first quarter or the second quarter of 2021 into our diary. I personally see 2021 as a year of a lot of development.
And would you say, broadly speaking, Sabina, that member states are on board when it comes to this specific area of developing insect farming, the authorization of former foodstuffs with meat and fish, for example? Would you say that they're broadly buying into that?
They're certainly buying into the authorization for the use of insect pups in pig and poultry. That is, they are buying in. Now, when it comes to the use of, you know, former foodstuffs, including meat and dairy, I can't even tell you whether they're buying in, but I can tell you that everybody is highly concerned that we can only do this provided it is safe. So I would say, you know, the level of preparation, the level of reassurance we have at a given moment in time from EFSA that there are safe ways, that would determine in future also the discussion with member states. So I'd say here we have to go really step by step. We have noted the interest of the industry. We are not yet there that we launch discussions with member states. The first step that we really have to go through is to reassure ourselves that this is possible, also possible on a large scale in a safe manner. So I see this aspect as a rather complex one, but one also on which we are determined to work.
Okay, Sabina. And a question that just came in from rather a participant before the event, just a question from Anna, which is quite interesting, a journalist. She would like to know, in your opinion, what will the EU's food systems look like in 2030? So I'm asking you to look into your crystal ball, Sabina, and maybe to consider this in the context of the post-COVID-19 recovery.
Yeah. No, many thanks for this question, because I think, you know, the way we want food systems to look in 2030, we have set out. And we are really very much encouraged by the various players and the various sectors on how they are taking this head on and really looking into their individual operations. So I'm very certain that we will manage by 2030 to have a neutral environmental impact on the planet. I'm so hopeful, you know, with the background of my work on how everybody is tackling the issue of food waste, how everybody in their operations is looking at reducing CO2 emissions, how we have really commitment to individual or general codes of conduct of introducing more sustainability, again, on the 3 pillars into companies' operations. I see a huge interest of consumers, because we should not forget consumers are a big driver of the development. Consumers who want really to know more about sustainability and want to behave more sustainable. So I think food systems will look different. COVID has scared us. I mean, scared us as COVID, but it has also brought home at the beginning of the first wave, you know, how important robust food systems are and how little it actually takes to derail them. I think we have come and bounced back very quickly, also with the help of the Commission there. to a more robust and stable situation. But I think the recognition, also the recognition of the contribution of food producers and food processors to our daily lives has really increased a lot. So yes, I think we all value food much more than we did before COVID. We understand the value of short supply chains. We understand the value of direct relations between producers and their clients. And I think we have all understood that we have really to be much better prepared for crisis in this sector. So a more sustainable food system will at the same time prevent, derailing in moments of crisis. And maybe lastly, the European Union is putting in a lot of funds now for this transition under the Green Deal. It also earmarks the funds for the COVID recovery with the aim to really do this transition. So a lot of funds and a lot of projects will be unlocked in the months to come, also in the wake and in the phase of recovery from COVID. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Sabina. We're actually going to go now to the Slido app, and I see that there's a number of questions coming in from participants. I would remind you, ladies and gentlemen, maybe to provide your name and just give us an idea of your background. So it just informs the question a little bit for us. So I'll go first to the question that got the most likes, let's say. This is from Michael, an insect farmer who's taking part in today's webinar. And it says, according to the Farm to Fork strategy, the Commission will set a proposal for EU-level targets for food waste reduction by 2023. What are the implications here, Sabina, for the insect sector specifically?
Yes, no, thank you very much. And the target is really something we will be reflecting on once we have really the measurements from the member states. So that will be 2022, 2023. Then we will understand much better where food waste is generated, where it is under control, where we need to step in. Now, I do not know if in the end the target in itself will have direct implications for the sector, but what we all understand is that we have to employ a certain hierarchy on how to deal with food waste. So we are not supposed to let anything go to waste. And food waste as a substrate for insect farming is something that we will develop further. And as I explained, I mean, we are very much interested in opening the pathway for safe use of food waste also in insect farming. So there is clearly this consciousness of the link, and I see we have Valentina on the meeting today. She will obviously be also very, very interested what the Commission is doing there in regulatory terms. But it's firmly on the horizon, and we are working on it. However, safety first.
Okay, and you've made that point very clear about safety, guided, of course, by the European Food Safety Authority in Parma. We're going now to the next question, if you don't mind, Sabina. Dr. Uliter has mentioned twice the need for an assessment on ABP feedstock for insects. Has your Director General, DG Santé, asked for this assessment to be made, or is there a time scale on this? So it's quite a specific question there for you.
No, we have not asked for this assessment yet. And so there is no time scale. We are really at the reflection stage, how we best design this, how we also best have this assessment framed. So this is under reflection and in consideration, but we are not yet there. We have no time scale that I could possibly share with you. And as I said, this part is probably also the most complex one and requires the most preparation, so to say, that we can go forward.
Okay, and the next question that's popping up on Slido is how will the European Commission support innovative and sustainable farming practices such as insect farming? And that's coming in from Sophie, who is a consultant. So this is sort of a broad-ranging question, Sabina, probably crossing into DG Agri as well, DG Research, etc.
Yes, indeed. There is as I said, there is a vast range of support mechanisms there. I think it is probably best to answer this question also from the practical experiences of some of our insect farmers here today on the call. But as I said, there is quite a substantive research funding set aside specifically for the topic of alternative proteins. There is the idea, obviously, that through the common agricultural policy, the aims of the farm to fork strategy and the Green Deal as such, that they will also form part of what the member states then in their national plans can, so to say, foster and bring forward. So a lot of decisions in that respect will be made on national level as well. As I say, I'm coming very much from the regulatory side. We are working, on all aspects. And obviously, coming maybe back for the substrates as feed for insects, I mean, we are in exchange with the sector to understand on which substrate basically the priority should lie. So we don't want to go ahead on one particular path without being certain that this is really the one that is really important for the sector.
Okay, thank you very much, Sabina. I think everyone will agree that you've given a very broad tour d'horizon of the situation from a regulatory perspective, and we thank you very much for your insight and authority on all things to do with authorizations and a very broad spectrum in DG Santé. So thank you very much for joining us this morning, Sabina. A pleasure speaking to you as always. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to invite participants to access Slido once again for a little bit of a fun interval, shall we say. So first up, I would like to know where my participants on today's webinar come from. Where do you come from? Which town, village, city, country? And we'll create a word cloud to see which place perhaps earns the spot where most people are located. So feel free to access Slido, tell me where you're from, and we will create what's known as a word cloud. Okay, well, we're getting some interesting input at the moment. It's coming in, very broad geographical spread. Very interesting. Planet Earth, glad to hear that there's someone joining us from Planet Earth. Any other planets? West Flanders, very specific. Excellent. Okay, we'd like to welcome our participants as well that are taking part from outside the European Union, of course. I see Switzerland there. Tel Aviv. Very good. Kosovo. Welcome to you all. St. Petersburg, Russia. Very welcome to you as a participant. Okay, that's a very broad spread geographically. I understand that there's about 400 people participating on this webinar. So a very warm welcome to you all. And as we can see, a very broad spread from around the world. So welcome. Okay. So shall we just bring up the word cloud just to see? We'll consider this the final numbers. So I think you would agree that it's Netherlands, Germany, Italy that have the largest fund, followed by, this is good for my eye test, I won't need to see an optician for a while, France, Germany, and Switzerland. Scotland, of course, Dr. William Clark. I hope maybe fellow compatriots are also joining. So yes, well, that was our first Slido of this morning, a sort of a word cloud. And my next question to you all is, in one word, how would you best describe your expectations for this event? And let's see what sort of word cloud this will generate. Someone getting in there telling me that they're from Morocco. So also a very warm welcome to you. Some of the words that are being generated right now, ladies and gentlemen, knowledge is probably the primary one that I'm seeing. Informative, learning, information, an update on regulatory issues, which has just been done by Dr. Sabina Ulicher. Sustainability, of course, is a key word. Clarification, that will probably come out during the course of this morning's discussion. Networking, of course, that would be better in person, but surely we'll have a nice network after this, and maybe we can swap stories and exchange information in a more informal capacity after this webinar. What else are we seeing? Alternatives, illuminating, interesting, visionary. How about some of the larger ones? Legislation, of course, a funding update, which is always important when you consider the budget that the European Union has. And as Dr. Sabina Ulicher mentioned about the research budget under Horizon Europe, inspiration, insights, alternatives, market leader. Let's see, knowledge sharing, of course, and opportunities. And of course, insect farmers are also looking for clarity on timing and a better understanding. So we'll wrap that word cloud up. And my final question to you this morning, ladies and gentlemen, for now in any case, an interesting one. Have you ever eaten insects or insect-fed animal products? If so, A, yes, I love insects, or B, no, but I'm eager to try. Okay, well, this is surprising. 70%, 69% have said that they love insects, but let's see what the final straw is. Okay, are we coming with 63% of you, are those participants that are, oh, I apologize. It's changing before my eyes. Let's just give it a moment. Okay, an interesting fall of 60-40, 61-39% to be precise. So 61 of you out there responded, yes, I love insects, and 40%, just less than 40%, are very eager to try. So that was fun. So let's get back to business now for the next part of our webinar. I would now like to introduce Dr. Bas Drucker, who is Policy Officer working on organic farming in the European Commission's DG Agri. Bas is an entomologist by profession and was active in the development of the new organic regulation and its implementation, which of course has been postponed by 1 year until 2022. At the end of this presentation, again, you will have an opportunity to ask questions to Bas. Again, indicate your name and where you're coming from, which makes the debate more interesting. And then at 10 o'clock this morning, we will take a short break for a well-deserved coffee. So Bas, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rose, for introducing me. Thank you for the organization to invite me. I think, like Sabine did, I couldn't agree more with her in stressing the importance of this issue, and especially importance and the potential for insects farming on dealing with food waste and giving sustainable possibilities for feed in agriculture and in all kind of livestock. Having said this, I hope you can see my screen. I assume that you can, so I start with the presentation. My presentation will be about opportunities for insects as feed or food under the new organic regulation and the Green Deal. I give you the outline here of my talk. It will be about the Green Deal and the farm to fork and biodiversity, and the organics playing a role in it. The organic action plan and the public consultation. The new, well, it's not so new anymore, but the new organic regulation and its implementation by 2022. prospects for insects as food and feed in organics. The Green Deal and the Farm to Fork. Well, Sabine has already mentioned much of it. There are climate targets for 2030 and 2050. It's about restoring and preserving ecosystem, biodiversity strategy. It's about zero pollution, toxic-free environment. It's about fair, healthy, environmentally friendly food systems, so the Farm to Fork. And well, not all four, there are many more aspects of it, but these four issues are certainly very important for organics. For organic farming, organic aquaculture, and organic processed products, because these are the three main issues in organics. Because in organics this is, among other things, about use of renewable resources and indeed promoting higher biodiversity on organic farmland. There is a lot of science showing this. Use of natural substances as plant protection products, and restricted use of other inputs. And most of all, the Farm to Fork issue gives specific targets for organics. There are very ambitious targets, and the first is to achieve 25% by surface area under the organic production in the EU by 2030, and achieve a significant increase in organic aquaculture by 2030. So how are we going to achieve this? And the way to do it is described in the Organic Action Plan. Not published yet, but what we did is a public consultation on the roadmap and let's say the summary of the Organic Action Plan. We have just finalized the public consultation, but the questionnaire is still online. There is still a questionnaire ongoing. That part of the consultation has the deadline of 27th of this month. So if you still want to, if you haven't already given your feedback on this roadmap, then you can still fill in the questionnaire. And this is on the web site that you see here down below. What is in this action plan? To achieve 25% by surface area under the organic production and achieve a significant increase by 2030, the current 8% of surface area must be tripled. So that is how ambitious it is. The plan aims also to help member states and the sector to achieve the 25% target by stimulating supply and demand in a balanced way, and that's very important, without jeopardizing quality and consumer trust. So there are lots of risks with this ambitions. So we have to really be careful in implementing them. Currently, the production and consumption are unevenly distributed in the EU. I will show you in a few slides how. The action plan should tackle this problem. The plan also aims to go beyond the setting of rules for certification when moving towards more sustainable, efficient use of natural resources. And here, certainly using feeds as from insects into aquaculture is, for instance, an issue that is very relevant for that. And further improve the contribution of the organic sector to climate neutrality, environmental protection, and biodiversity preservation that is currently not completely represented in the organic rules. If you look at the organic farming sector currently, in 2018, the figures are a bit old, but they have only become more favorable now. The European Union has 13.8 million hectares of organic farming. and more than half is only in 5 countries, mainly in Spain. Spain has is a top, and then followed by France, Italy, Germany, and Austria. And currently, only 7.7% of the EU farmland is organic. So how do we achieve the 25%? Well, if you look, some member states have already achieved quite substantially towards 25%, so like Austria. And we have seen quite a dramatic increase in the transition of farmers towards organics in the last decade, 65% more. But of course, we need more, and that's why we need this plan, of course. And to balance this, we also have to, not only production, also the consumption has to be balanced to really to prevent steep decreases in prices, for instance, and which would really undermine the profitability of organics. So the European Union is, in fact, the second largest single market after the US, and only followed after a very long time by China. And in the European Union, Germany is the biggest retailer market, followed by France, Italy, Sweden, and the UK. If we look at Denmark, which is the highest per capita consumption of organic food, you see that 311 euro, 12 euro are spent per person in Denmark. And you see also that 11.5% of the grocery in Denmark is organic. And this also, yes, 11% is already halfway to 25%. So this gives us hope that we can do this and balance this move towards these achievements, these aims and targets in the next decade. I'm also going to talk you through the new organic regulation and its implementation in 2022, and it's the postponement. You may not know, but the proposal of the current of this future legislation is we did that already in 2014. It was adopted by the legislators, the Council of Ministers and the European Parliament after in these 4 years of negotiations with us and between them in only 2018. The intention was that it would totally apply by the 1st of January, but then COVID came around. Although we have the implementation of the secondary legislation nearly finished, but there's just a few minor details that still have to be done. We have decided to postpone the application date of the regulation because of the pandemic, and in particular because of that, more time is needed for stakeholders to adapt to new rules, in particular for livestock production, where new buildings need to be built, etc. For that reason, there is no way that we could avoid, and we did a lot of effort to do this, to have the postponement in time, because that is, to postpone it is also a huge exercise, I can tell you. The secondary legislation that is ready, we have made rules for animal production: cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, deer, poultry, ducks, rabbits, aquaculture species. And for the first species of insects is bees. Bees, of course, as pollinators, as honey producers. And that's the only insect so far for which we have specific rules. We have rules for products and substances authorized for use in organics and non-organic ingredients. We are about to adopt these rules and publish them in the official journal. We have made rules on control measures in case of non-compliance, rules on imports from third countries, and rules on seeds, on this says organic heterogeneous plant reproductive material. Well, you call them organic seeds, perhaps is more a term that you perhaps better understand without me having to explain everything about it, hopefully. Then the secondary legislation that is not ready yet, but where we are also we have already started working on some production rules, salt, and what you are most interested, of course, insects for food and feed. We are already in the process of starting. We have already met member states on this, but we could not get ready with this, and I'll tell you later why. Definition of the term factory farming is not ready in fertilizers. So there is an unharmonized situation on what kind of manure you can use in organics as fertilizers. Specific rules on food processing techniques, although for wine we have already specific rules, and on cleaning and disinfectants, for which we have no rules at well. Cleaning and disinfectants, in particular for in the processing sector, we have no rules at all. The prospects for insects as food and feed. This is what you are most interested in, of course. Sabine has already mentioned many of these, because for rules in organics, the first thing that we need is rules at horizontal level. So for the general food safety, novel food, etc., we cannot make rules for organics before there are general rules in on the horizontal level, because these rules for organics are rules that are restricting further the what is possible for when something is can get a label for organics. First of all, the products have to comply with the horizontal rules, and that is the main problem that we currently have. So for insects, they are livestock. There are rules for keeping, housing, welfare, and killing insects. These organic rules at EU level are still pending. And that is because we need these rules, because according to the horizontal rules, insects are considered as livestock. We also need rules for feeding. These rules are also pending at the EU level. Rules for disposing of manure, frass, substrates, and remains. I mean, the combination of that, you know, all of this, of course. Well, this is about to be solved, this product. That's good to hear, so that we can start working on them, on organic rules for that as well. Insects are food. They are, we need rules, horizontal rules on novel food for each insect. As Sabine told you already, there are many dossiers that are currently evaluated by EFSA, but only after that we can proceed to make also organic rules. Rules on food hygiene, horizontal rules already apply. And then there are not so many more obstacles. And for feed, there are rules on animal byproducts, already mentioned, to prevent BSE, of course, and horizontal rules are also pending for that, although they are already there for aquaculture. And PAP, well, I'll come back to that later. And rules for feed hygiene, these already apply. The question is, can insects already be organic now? That is a good question. Even though there are no organic rules at EU levels, member states can put in place national organic livestock production rules for insects. In our new legislation, that is a new regulation 848, That is not applicable yet, but something similar applies to the current legislation. In the absence of certain production rules for specific livestock species, well, or insects are livestock species, member states can put in place national rules. Member states haven't done so yet, but they are, some of them I know that they are quite close to have specific rules for that. But they will have to notify this to the Commission, so we would know if these are in place. And currently, as far as we know, they are not in place yet, but maybe they are quite far. Some member states are, yeah. So when they are there, then indeed organic insects will exist. Now, Commission is working with the member states on EU production rules. We speculate that this may be finalized by the end of 2021, begin 2022, depending also on the finalization of the horizontal rules. But how these rules, where we end up with these rules, is still a little bit, a little bit difficult to say, because there is quite some variety of opinion among the member states what these rules should look like. In the picture here, you see that not only we humans are the first, that we were not the first one to keep insects as livestock. The ants were ahead of us several millions of years. Okay, let's continue. Insects as food. Yeah, it is possible when national rules are in place, as I just said, and if novel food and other food safety rules are respected. And yeah, there are several dossiers being evaluated. So I think when these are ready to go for the conventional, for the general authorization for novel food, then there is hardly any obstacle, if there are national rules, to also do that for to make them organic. And the same with feed. Live insects can be fed to animals, as you see below. Well, can be fed. I mean, the animals are just feeding themselves already with live insects. About the processed animal proteins, as Sabine already mentioned, can already be used in conventional agriculture. If there are rules for producing them organic international, they can also be used in organic agriculture. As long as the other rules are respected. So this is all from me. I would like to give the floor back to Rose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bas. That was a very informative presentation. As an agricultural journalist, I can tell you that I learned a lot from that. So thanks very much for that, Bas. We're now actually going to go straight to Slido questions, if you don't mind. And I have a message from the Slido team to, as well as mentioning your name and indicating where you're from, to also vote on the questions that appear on your screen, so that we're touching upon the questions with the most votes, the most popular questions, if you will. So Bas, we'll go now to the first question, if you don't mind. Let me just see, let's just bring the screen up here. And the first question comes in from Sylvain, who is a vertical farmer. Just one moment now. Vertical farmer, and the question is, Bas, insects are farmed vertically. Will that be taken into account in the farm to fork strategy, whereby there's a 25% target for organic agricultural land? So that's a very technical question. So how will insect farming, when farmed vertically, contribute to that overall goal?
Okay, insects are indeed farmed vertically. They still have to comply with horizontal rules. But yes, the targets for organics, organic land, of course, are for agriculture in general. Agriculture, the target for agriculture is not so much linked to the land use. there are no specific targets, except that there should be a significant increase, for instance. For insects, when they are used as feed, of course, this is not linked to directly to land, but of course, the feed that are used for insects, if there are waste products from agriculture, then of course you can link them to the land surface. But that is so complicated that I can't very much go into. Actually, this is one of the issues that is going to be discussed in depth with the member states in the future.
Okay, so this is still ongoing. You're breaking up slightly, Bas, so maybe just, I'm not sure if it's your microphone that was maybe fallen out of position or something, but yeah, we can still hear you perfectly well. I'll put another question to you if you don't mind. Manon, who holds a PhD. You mentioned the importance of organic farming, but organic farms have generally a 20% lower yield than conventional farming. What do you think about this with regards to the increase in global population? So that's a good question in terms of the Commission encouraging a 25% share of agricultural land when we have to take into account lower yields. So Bas, what do you say to Manon on that issue?
Okay, that's a very good question, and it's an issue that is very much discussed. Thank you, Manon, for this question. If when you say 20% lower yields, well, this is quite variable depending on which type of agriculture you're looking at, but you isolate this into the context of the yield in one particular place. But if you look at the total picture, you also have to take into account, for instance, animal feed when you look at livestock production, the fertilizers that you use that come from several other parts of the world. So if you look at the complete picture, then this 20% lower yields, there's a different picture. There are several publications about that show that it is not so dramatically lower if you look at the complete picture. But
okay,
yeah, you can
well, thanks
discuss about this for a long time.
But as you say, it really depends on the crop and on the product that you're referring to when you refer to yield. So this is something, I suppose, it's like a Pandora's box once you start talking about it, Bas. Now, the last question that we're going to have before we go to our coffee break, and I see that it's coming in from Alex, who is an insect farmer. So the question, Bas, is there a time horizon on when the EU stops considering insects livestock so we can start feeding them organic food waste, such as industrial food waste? So this is obviously the definition of insects in terms of legislation, etc. So is this something that the Commission is considering?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the fact that insects are considered livestock is the main obstacle. I mean, they are considered livestock in general, and I think it doesn't. So yeah, finally, we found a way to use insects, feeding them food waste, and using them as feed in agriculture. So it's an obstacle. If we would stop doing that, I'm not sure if the main obstacles would be removed. I don't think so.
Okay, and what about industrial food waste then? Just a comment on that, maybe.
Well, that's an issue. Industrial food waste. Currently, they can already be fed industrial food waste in the horizontal. Let's say in general, what they are fed is industrial produced agricultural food waste. But what they exactly can be fed in organics, that is still a question to be debated in depth. And it's not dependent on,
well, we're going to leave those slides. Okay, thank you, Bas, for that point of clarity. So we're going to leave those questions there. We've gone slightly over time, but I think it was a very interesting discussion, so we're totally fine with that. It's 10 past 10 now. We're going to take a 15-minute coffee break and we will return at 10:25. But before I go, I would like to very much thank Mr. Bas Drucker for his intervention and of course Dr. Sabina Jülicher at the start of the webinar. So join us, enjoy your coffee and come back to us at around 10:25 for the next session and a panel debate. Ladies and gentlemen, well, I hope you enjoyed your coffee as much as we did and feel energized for this next panel debate. So first of all, without further ado, allow me to introduce the panelists. First up, we have our keynote speaker, Dr. William Clark, who works as a bioeconomy policy analyst at Zero Waste Scotland and describes himself as a passionate advocate of reducing the climate impact and resource intensity of the human food supply chain. Chris Atkinson is an active member of the IFOAM Organics Europe board and is head of standards at the Soil Association. Chris is also an independent agricultural consultant. We also have Valentina Massa joining us, who was elected, as she said, president of the European Former Foodstuffs Processors Association at the end of September. Valentina is the managing director at Dalma Mangimi, the largest former foodstuff processor in Italy. And lastly, we have Ludwig Herrmann, who is president and member of the board of European Sustainable Phosphorus Platform, ESPP. Ludwig has over 35 years experience in the areas of technology, sustainability and innovation. A very warm welcome to my guests. And without further ado, I will invite Dr. William Clark to take the floor. William, the floor is yours.
Good day, my name is William Clark. Thank you very much for the introduction. As mentioned, I'm a bioeconomy policy analyst with Zero Waste Scotland, and I'm here today to talk about my last year's work, really. So opportunities for a new protein strategy, lessons from initiatives at national and regional levels. So I think these things always have to start with an honest conversation, and you know, we Scotland are quite happy to take that place. So looking at the Scottish sectors, the emissions profile, as you can see in the top here, Scottish agriculture and related land use is responsible as the second largest emissions sector across the Scottish economy. And then if we take that to the European level, agricultural emissions as a proportion of total across EU, shown on the bottom here, Scotland's actually, you know, has the third largest emissions from its agricultural sector in the EU. And for a very small country, that's quite interesting. So a very recent report by the Centre of Innovation and Excellence in Livestock here in the UK identified that industry could only deliver 19% of the aspirational carbon reduction target by 2035. Sorry. And I mean, this really highlights the urgent need to advance technologies such as insects that can really close the loops, introduce circularity and move this into a much more economically, environmentally and ecologically sustainable space. But we really need to drive the ambition to develop new innovations to address this critical issue. So the emissions are a huge problem here, and we have reached a plateau. We don't think we have the technology capacity left to make the reductions that we still need to achieve, even close to net zero. So I should probably start this slide by saying there aren't any Scottish insect farms, but Scotland is a great place for insect farming. So on the left here, these presentations were taken from an insect event. The one on the left is from the Scottish Rural Universities and Colleges who deal with agriculture. The one on the right is from the Scottish Aquaculture Innovation Centre, and the links are on the bottom here to both of these reports. So just looking at Agri Residues, so this is cancelled orders, this is pre-consumer, tasty, organic vegetable waste, as you would be feeding to insects under as an appropriate substrate. I have 987,000 tonnes per annum of substrate available. As I'm sure you all would know, you know, it's very difficult to capture the value of this. It's very difficult to prevent the impacts of it. The only good solution we've got is ploughing it back into the land. So the farmers essentially lose all the land, effort, and money that they've put into the system, into these waste products. And at the same time, so Scottish Aquaculture Innovation Centre took insect protein, turned it into a nutritional equivalent to fish meal within the diet of salmon. So what you see on the right-hand side here is the inclusion rates for the meals, 7.4%, 14.7, 22, and then the estimated values of that. And this is relative to aquaculture production through salmon in 2018, and then looking forward to 2030 through the Ambition programme, which intends to double production. But I mean, through that, we have a minimum of 20,000 tons of insect protein demand, increasing to 55,000 tons, and that is a very conservative estimate. So as I said, we don't have an insect farm here yet, but we are working on it. Watch this space. But Scotland is a great place for insect farming. So the Zero Waste Scotland Journey with Insects, I just wanted to, a lot of people might not have heard of us, but we've been working, I personally have been working on insects one way or another since about 2016. We were using them we were developing new omega-3 ingredients for fish feeds. We were using the insects to concentrate that functional ingredient. But I moved over into Zero Waste Scotland. We were talking about targets for with food waste. Scotland has a 33% reduction target in place already. And my role is to act against that and the 970,000 tons we saw earlier. So we held an insect farming event. We worked very closely with the UK Insect Biomass Conversion Task and Finish Group, which was formed by government and continues to work across the value chain really to advance the industry. Following the lead of IPIFF, regulators have a key position within this story. So we work very closely with our UK regulators. So that's in Scotland, it's CEPA, Food Standards Scotland, and the Animal Plant Health Agency, and there is equivalent organisations at the UK level. We realise that consumers are always a question. We need to open up the industry to them, so we reframed the regulatory guidance into a how-to guide for the public who are interested in insect farming. We work very closely with a number of academic institutes within Scotland and across the UK. We're very interested in FRAS as a biofertilizer. There's a research programme at the moment looking into the effects of FRAS and reducing potato cyst nematodes, which are a major problem for the industry here in Scotland. And at the same time, we're working closely with the University of Agriculture. We can process animal protein, feed fish. Scotland's aquaculture industry is one of our key three sectors. So we're very interested in looking at various Scottish waste streams and what the potential of those is to convert into a specific optimised aquafeed. Again, following developments in the EU very closely. I mean, I'm thinking about, my pronunciation is going to be terrible, but Ocean supermarkets in France, marketing the insect-fed trout. But the key thing I want to draw your attention to here is, we're very active in advancing the Scottish opportunity. If you as an insect farmer come into Scotland, we hold resource maps of all the wastes in Scotland, and that's broken down into waste type. So if you came to Scotland with a shopping list, we can provide a regional map of where those resources are and the volumes of those resources across Scotland. We're in the process of updating it so it would be a live system. So you would be able to see substrates coming to market as they appear, as they become a waste. We work very closely with the regulators and continue to do so. So we are very much dedicated to insects as feeds and foods, but we also recognise there's potential for a second value stream where you'd be dealing with more complex wastes such as catering wastes. Very much looking to the future though. We're very active on the national scale. We work with all the major insect producers. We are part of the recent ICSF Challenge Fund. So I'm sure you guys are aware there was UK government gave £11 million to an insect farming consortium to advance the industry here in the UK. And as demonstrated today, we are very interested in the EU and global platforms, and we welcome inquiries, activities, collaboration. So, you know, international activity is very much part of what we do within the insect space. The interesting thing for me is, you know, we've been very concentrated on insects, but the lessons that we learn within insects, the opportunities and barriers that you guys have identified and we've spoken to are the same issues that we see across the whole bioeconomy. You know, the end of waste, subsidies in the wrong place, waste energy, substrate competition, all of these things that are relevant within the insects really act as a canary in the coal mine for the wider bioeconomy. But Scotland is very much part of the EU, and we all face a very similar problem. So the slide here shows you the EU balance, protein balance sheet. You know, they look at all the proteins coming through the system, they balance it up and they figure out, you know, this is what we've got, this is what we produce internally, this is what we need to find somewhere else. So 78% of the feed used in the EU is from the EU. That sounds fantastic, but the EU's self-sufficiency in terms of high-pro feed ingredients, so that's soybeans, soybean meals, and so on, is only 26%. So, you know, we are very much import dependent on, you know, other countries. You know, these high-pro feed ingredients are only really produced in 3 countries. COVID-19's highlighted, you know, the global supply chains are very fragile. You know, fires in those regions, political unrest, there's a number of factors and the risk is increasing. So this is why, you know, insects and alternative proteins are critical. Insects' nutritional profile, they're in between high pro and super pro, depending on the species and the substrate and the raising system, etc. So they can significantly improve this situation. And by that, I mean that, you know, they can improve the local, national, EU self-sufficiency in terms of high-pro feed ingredients. So, you know, we can reduce that import dependency, we can do great stuff, but at the same time, you know, this is how we introduce circularity at the local level. You know, if we're importing green beans from South Africa and they enter our circular economy, it's pseudo-circular, you know, it doesn't really happen. So we need to really shrink these supply chains domestically. And, you know, this thread, these 3 threads, the environment, the economics, and the ecological benefits we can get by displacing deforestation and everything else out of our supply chains are significant. So, in recognition of this, we can't solve, the global community, the national communities, the EU community, we can't solve this climate crisis or ecosystem degradation or biodiversity loss or future food security without changing the way we produce and consume food. Now, I mean, we weren't aware of this until we started working with the insects again. So governments around the world have developed or are developing holistic, sustainable protein plans to support their climate objectives and ensure the long-term viability of their domestic agricultural industries. Depending on, you know, you can see the countries here, depending on where they are in time scale, the drivers are different. So Germany was very much about GMO foods. France was about, you know, consolidating and accelerating supply chains. It was about, you know, doing more with the proteins that they could produce internally. There was the soy declaration in 2017. The EU plant protein strategy really looked across the top of them and created a safe space for the, you know, member states to adapt towards, you know, away from monocultures, you know, towards more sustainable systems, diversify their protein streams, if you will. Really put in place, you know, sometimes when we talk about alternative proteins, you're competing against a well-established, mature, fossil-based technology such as soy. So how do we, you know, create a financial leverage so that, you know, insect protein can compete with these types of soy, whether that's subsidizing insects or you know, carbon tax on soy or similar. These are factors still to be understood. But I mean, as soon as that 2018 plant protein strategy, and I mean that was specifically looking at these supply chain issues and environmental issues, as we've spoken about. Netherlands, Finland, Denmark, and Manitoba must have all been watching things. Manitoba is actually related to France, so it's almost a follow-up. But what I want to identify as it. Germany and France can grow their own soy, Netherlands to a degree. Finland and Denmark is the same as Scotland in terms of climate. They can grow peas and beans, they can do a lot of things, but their climate and their economic structure really limits it. So rather than talking about plant proteins, the Netherlands is a bridge in between, but Finland and Denmark start to talk about specifically about alternative proteins. So they bring in seaweeds, they bring in insects, they bring in grass refining, they bring in some absolutely fascinating, cascading refining options. And this is rather than when things are split across programs as they are within food systems, it's very difficult. There's cross interference, there's cross purposes. These protein strategies really pull things into one place. They create a coherent, single source of policy to accelerate us through it, and then they use various other mechanisms to adapt everything else around it. So Spain, Austria, and Belgium were developing these just prior to the COVID situation this year. We've not heard anything since. And this is actively, this is something that we are actively thinking about here in Scotland, with reference to insects and everything else. So, conclusions, while each of the protein strategies we mentioned is specific to the country, the region, the context, the consumers and everything else, there are a series of, commonalities across them. So each of them puts in place extensive stakeholder engagement and collaboration throughout development and implementation. We need to hear the voices of all these people. We need to minimize, the conflicts between industries, and we really need to develop those synergies between agriculture, aquaculture, and the alternative proteins, for want of a better term, but thinking about insect farming specifically. Each of them seeks to consolidate and accelerate supply chains. They look at the proteins they can produce, and they put in a program around about developing them to offset, less sustainable protein sources. Now, that's all about infrastructure capacity and job creation. Each of them seeks to increase domestic protein production to reduce that dependence on imported soy, fish meal, and the associated negative effects. Each of them seeks to, reduce the total environmental and ecological impacts of feed and food supply chains. And I mean, this next point is really the critical one. Each of them makes very careful consideration of circular economy platforms are available and the best way to integrate these circular economy principles to utilise biomass resources and residues, not just within sectors, but between the sectors. The opportunities always come at the interface, and that's the kind of space that this tries to create. Each of them, supports accelerated innovation and sustainable product development to capitalise on market trends and subsector growth. More than 15,000, sustainable products entered the market from 2015 to 2018. So, in terms of, looking for a niche market to capitalise on, these feed and food products are, by feed, I mean insect-fed products and insect food products, really are a critical thing. When we think about innovation, we quite often think of an inventor and he makes a machine, but often it's the process and the products that sit underneath that are innovative bits. So how do governments put in place a support program to make that happen? Each of them recognises that SMEs find it very difficult to scale. Scottish aquaculture wants 500 tonnes of protein per order. So how do we support those SMEs moving to scale? We need to figure out how to mobilise public and private finance, and that's low risk finance, non-diluting finance hopefully as well, to support agriculture's low carbon transition. And again, this is about integrating insect farming with that agricultural context. And I mean, I think here is the critical one, and something that we talk about very often within Zero Waste and at IPIFF: legislative and policy reform to support an advanced transition to the circular economy. Welfare and safety are critical. Everybody recognises that, but all of the legislation and policy that we work within at the moment was developed for a linear economy, and now we're moving towards circular. So a lot of the things that were right in the past probably need to be retouched again in the present to really enable that significant growth that we've been talking about today. So each of the nations we spoke about has put this programme in place. We don't understand fully what it looks like in Scotland yet, but we are investigating it. it's a fantastic thing. It's all inspired by EU and EU member states. And just to finish off, if any of you are interested in finding more about this work, we have an event on the 26th of November at 9 to 13:30 GMT, and the link to the events is there. Thank you.
Interesting perspective from the Scottish point of view. And I think you pretty much sold the idea of upping sticks, moving to Scotland and opening its first insect farm. So thank you very much for that, Dr. William Clark there from Zero Waste Scotland. But now, the next part of our session, I would invite each of the other panelists to deliver an impulse statement, introducing yourself and also providing an answer to this following question, which is the perfect segue, I think you'd agree, from Dr. William Clark's presentation on how can insects help in the transition from a linear to a circular business model. And this impulse statement to Chris, Valentina and Ludwig should be no more than 3 to 5 minutes per speaker, if you don't mind. And then we'll open it up to a very lively Q&A session afterwards. So Chris, thank you for your patience. The floor is now yours.
Very much, Rose, and thank you very much to IPIFF for inviting me to talk to this workshop today. So I'm Chris Atkinson. In my day job, I work for the Soil Association in the UK, but I'm here today in my role as a board member of IFOAM Organics Europe. IFOAM Organics Europe's the umbrella organisation for organic food and farming in Europe, and we represent 200 members in 34 European countries. And many of those 200 members are in themselves membership organisations. So IFOAM Organics Europe represents many thousands of businesses involved in the whole of the organic food chain. And as you heard earlier from Bas, the focus of organic food and farming is on circularity. We like to think of ourselves as the ultimate and best current example of approach to circular production of food and a circular approach to farming. I do feel that Bas made a very good presentation around the circular aspects of organic food and farming, but and he also focused very much on the legislative aspects of food and farming. But I'd just like to remind everybody that organic began as a civil society movement, and the role and input of consumers and that relationship between the aspirations of the movement and the legislation and consumers is very important, and it's always an important consideration in what we do on a practical level as well. So circularity and improving circularity are obviously the focus for today, and the role of insects in organic production could be quite varied. As Bas has pointed out, we need to develop rules for the production of organic insects, and there are various number of uses for those. We could eventually see them as food, but the focus very much today has been on feed, and we've heard about the potential role of insects in aquaculture. And actually the focus today has very much been on protein, but I'd like to pick up on something that William said. He mentioned omega-3s, and I think that we see in organic production a very wide number of potential roles for insects, because we have systems at the moment where we have carnivorous animals and omnivorous animals. Carnivorous animals such as salmon, omnivorous animals such as pigs and poultry, where feeding them a vegetarian diet either isn't an option in the case of the carnivores, or isn't ideal in the case of pigs and poultry. So there's an important role for insects to play in filling that gap, where at the moment we often have to rely on inputs from outside of the organic production system to meet those specific nutritional needs. But of course, as Bas pointed out, we do need a regulatory framework that allows us to do that, and we do need to get on with developing rules. But there are some challenges. The organic regulatory framework at the moment is very much developed from the point of view of traditional terrestrial livestock production systems. It's already stretched in some ways when we come to aquaculture, and the introduction of insects will doubtless present some significant challenges. We already had a question about the vertical nature of insect farming and the lack of a link to land-based production there. And that will obviously present some challenges in fitting it into the regulatory framework. But there is definitely a valuable role for insects in filling these various nutritional gaps and potentially in providing inputs to the organic system which can't be provided from within the system. So we heard about the potential for manure and frass and waste substrate from insect production to provide sources of fertility. We obviously have other speakers who are going to talk about the role of phosphorus as fertilizer, but within organic systems at the moment we do have the challenge of not having complete circularity, in that in many production systems humans are effectively the livestock for that system, and all of the waste products from humans can't be reused in organic systems at the moment. So inputs such as phosphorus are often challenging, and insects may have a role in filling that gap. So I think that's all I have to say for the moment, and I'd welcome any questions. I look forward to hearing from the other panelists.
Thank you very much, Chris. So we'll certainly have plenty of food for thought when the questions start rolling in. But without further ado, perhaps Valentina now. Valentina Massa, the floor is yours from IPIFF.
Thank you, Rose. Good morning, everyone. I wish to thank IPIFF for this invitation. I ask for having a few slides to introduce what is EFPA. EFPA is the European Farm Food Stock Processing Association, and today we are looking for the synergies. A few words about our membership. We have 4 national associations: Valoria from France, BFAN from Germany, Vido from the Netherlands, UKFFPA from the United Kingdom, then 3 company members: Dalma, my company, from Italy, Trotec from company members from France and Belgium, and Promic from Spain, Portugal, and France. Then we have 2 new 2 observer members: Adival from Denmark, just joined our association in September, and Nuevo from Greece. And then 2 associate members from the other side of the ocean: SBP Solution from Canada and Bakery Feeds from the United States. So it's no longer European, but it's international, and we are looking for an increase also our membership. Our sector is estimated in 3.5 million tons of farm food stock processed by year, but the potential can increase until the 6.5 we forecast. Please, can you change? Okay, perfect. So a few words about our processing. First of all, our farm foodstuff, the typology. Normally, farm foodstuff is bakery products, cakes, biscuits, chocolates, candies, all products like this, in some kinds milk and yogurt. They can come from the starting point of the line until the end line, also the packet products. We have a regulation that define what is farm foodstuff. That is a food that is no longer destined for human consumption, but is safe if it is destined as feed. As you can see, we have an organization to also depack the product that are packet. All the line is under the feed legislation, regulation 178, the 183, 767, and 68, 2013, and also 882. Next slide, please. Well, today we are looking for the synergies, the farm food stock sector and the insect farming. Both we have the capacity to valorize food losses, which have lost their initial value as food, into highly nutritional products, feed ingredients, and food sometimes for insect sector. We can offer a sustainable outlet solution for the food manufacturing sector, preventing the food waste. And we can give a sustainable input resource for feed manufacturing, lowering the environmental footprint of the feed rations. Both sectors have the duty to ensure food and feed safety all times. So I think we share the target. I heard before, thank you for attention, just a few words more. There were some speaker talking about food waste as an ingredient. At the moment, the waste is not allowed, and so always has the label of feed and products. Also because we are delivering to feed the manufacturing sector, they are looking for feed status of the product. But in conclusion, I see many opportunities of synergy to reduce potential food losses and increase sustainability of feed rations in terms of LACA, keeping always feed safety as a priority. Thank you.
Tina, and thank to you, to both you and Chris for really sticking to that succinct 3 to 5 minute slot. So now, Ludwig, you've been patient. I would now like to give you the floor for your presentation, your impulse statement. Please, Ludwig.
So, hello everybody. I'm happy to be here and to present briefly what we do at the European Sustainable Phosphorus Platform. We are a membership organization, and our goal is to care for phosphorus stewardship and to care for nutrient recycling, hence the circular economy. So we are directly in the center of the circular economy. I cannot change my slide now. Oh yeah, now it is. So we have about 50, close to 50 members from industry and from different sectors, science, industry, regulators, and also projects as such. We have a network of about 60,000 mail receivers, and we care for regulatory dialogue, networking, and communication. We are a not-for-profit association registered in Belgium and are active since 2014, and at the same time also cooperating with platforms in other parts of the world like USA, Canada, or Japan. Next slide, please. What is our role in with regard to insects? Of course, we are interested in the nutrient content, as our phosphorus tells from our name already. So we know that insect frass is a good fertilizer. We have published the results in some of our e-news, and we are continuously publishing if new findings come in. We see a nutrient content of about 4% N, about 1.5% P, and about 2.5% potassium. We know that we have several million tons, between 6 and 10 million tons of frass by 2030 in the EU, and we have frass already authorized in some member states. However, we have still a lot of legal challenges. One is the different regulatory treatment between animal byproducts and insect frass. We have two different regulations here. We have still not at all animal byproduct endpoints that may authorize insect frass as a fertilizer. And last but not least, it is not yet included in the EU fertilizing products regulation. So we are advocating to be taken into consideration, because we believe it will be an irrelevant carrier for nutrients for precision farming in the future. So this is what we are doing, and we hope and we support, of course, insect farming, and we are trying to help to get the loops closed by allowing insect frass as a European fertilizing product. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was all very interesting and all very succinct. So now let's get the ball rolling with some questions. I might start with you, William, if I may. I know that you've got a busy morning ahead of you because you have another event, the Future of Food virtual event to go to. So let's start the ball rolling with yourself. You have said in the past that Scotland's bioresource potential is enormous. What are the main challenges in tapping into that potential? And if I might add, or if I might ask about the B word, Brexit, what will be the main impact of Brexit on sort of assuring a sort of a vital and an energized bioresource economy?
Oh, I mean, I think with Scotland, we're a food and drink nation. You know, we produce amazing food, we produce amazing byproducts, but it's very diffuse, geographically. So there's big concentrations of certain products around Aberdeen or the Central Belt, for example. But if you as an insect farmer wanted to access distillery grains or things like that, you probably need to push out a wee bit from those areas. You know, a lot of the larger distilleries tend to have an agreement, or more recently, they've all put in anaerobic digesters. So they're taking their co-products and putting it into energy to run their plant. Whereas, you know, I would argue it should be fed to animals if possible, or certainly black soldier fly if we can't find an animal that's going to eat it. So it's very much figuring out where the key opportunities are and how to access them for insect farmers. So I would probably say it's depending on where you are in Scotland. I've got 1.7 million tonnes of these bioresources. If you look across Scotland annually, I think it's 27 million tonnes, but that includes non-food and food wastes and everything that we can't actually act on. So yes, potentially centralised, but at the same time decentralised possibly. You know, you're reducing the waste, you're not carrying water from one place to the next. So it's figuring out the right business model for or models potentially for the Scottish context. And I mean, I think with Brexit, none of us here in Scotland are too happy about things the way they're going. In many ways, COVID's done us a bit of a favour because it's made us really look at supply chains and how it works and domestic, productive capacity. We need to find new value. We need to do more with less. So, I mean, it's really the insects, the alternative proteins landscape, and the insects are going to come in and fill those gaps. At the same time, agriculture and aquaculture recognise the same as we were talking about earlier. There is risks around the sustainability of some of their ingredients. At the same time, consumers are more aware than ever before about the sustainability credentials of products and retailers at the same time. So everybody's just trying to get that mix right. The stakeholders are there, the value chain's there, everything's there. All we're needing is one of the, there's about, you guys will probably know better than me, there's about 10 insect farmers in the UK. They're all SMEs. So we need somebody to move into that space, really. As far as Brexit goes, we'll have to see what happens. I don't think we've got any more information than you guys. I know it's Chris.
Fair enough. All fingers crossed, I think, from an Irish perspective as well. I feel your pain, William. Just another question to you, William. A theme that's been an undercurrent throughout this morning's webinar has been the idea of research and innovation. And I suppose going back to Brexit, how do you think research and innovation will take a hit because of the maybe just not being able to access funding under these sort of large Horizon Europe strategies, etc.? Do you think Scotland will suffer in that regard?
That's a very difficult, very difficult question. I think as a nation we're very adaptive, and I think that extends to our academic institutions, our industries, and we see anybody that comes to Scotland and stays here as Scottish, I should probably say. So it also extends to our kind of international communities as well. But I mean, like I say, that's potentially not for me to answer.
Fair enough, William. I might turn to Valentina just to get the ball rolling in terms of Q&A. Obviously, you're an expert on upscaling products intended for human consumption into animal feed. And this is a question that came in from a participant earlier on in the day. How can partnerships between insect farmers and former foodstuffs processors expand, Valentina?
Yes, thank you. Well, the cooperation can be active. Where the product we deliver, it can be used as a potential substrates in certain farmers' insects, for example, or where some form of foodstuff needs to be processed as we do. We have decades of experience in managing of logistics and processing for the linking between the food sector and the feed sector. So it can be a skill we can bring to the table in a potential partnership. And not secondary, we share the same principle in terms of circular economy and sustainable production. So we believe we can be partners in many projects.
Okay, thank you, Valentina. Chris, if I might turn to you from IFOAM, how can local partnerships between organic stakeholders and insect farmers move to the next level? It's been mentioned a couple of times already this morning, the idea of the lack of availability of organically certified substrates. Do you see that this is a key bottleneck for insect farmers' development?
Yes, I do agree. Organic substrates will definitely be an issue, but I think that one of the things about insect farming is that the scalability is very flexible. You can have small scale production in a very small unit. You could have very large production, but I think that direct relationships between waste producers and insect farmers is something that we will need to develop and to develop quite quickly. But I think that ability to produce insects on a range of scales will be helpful in this context.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for that. And just a final question to Ludwig before we open up the Slido app. Ludwig, you mentioned this idea of insect-based frass, and I'd like to know how these new fertilizing products fit under the overall farm-to-fork strategy, particularly the objectives of the fertilizer sector.
We have, of course, within the farm-to-fork strategy, we aim at a reduction of nutrient losses. And reduction of nutrient losses is very much related to soil health, soil quality. And we need organic fertilizers. We need active ingredients as such to maintain and to improve the soil health. And I think insect frass could play a vital role there, because it's a very specific mixture, very rich mixture. And we believe that it could have a very positive effect on soil health. Of course, we need a lot of insect farmers to have a real impact on soils if you compare the volumes that we treat. Yeah, for us, it is an extremely forward-looking option to have more frass and have more organic, valuable organic ingredients to soil that have no detrimental impacts. Of course, we always have to look at hazards associated with new fertilizers coming in, and I think insect frass could be a quite clean component to our farm-to-fork and soil health strategy.
And sticking with the farm to fork strategy, Ludwig, how, in your opinion, can this reduction, the 20% reduction in fertilizers, actually be achieved? Is that doable?
I personally believe that it is doable, and we have a lot of potential. Of course, this target cannot be achieved by one single measure, so there's no silver bullet around. We need a bouquet of measures that can be soil amendments, that can be new fertilizers, and everything has to focus on loss reduction. And of course, if we increase the efficiency, if we reduce losses, at the same time we will need less. And we have to find also new strategies, new business models for the industry, because we want them to survive and to stay afloat. So we really need a bundle of measures to keep things going, to have a healthy economy and combine it with healthy soils and water bodies, because nutrient losses, of course, are a hazard to water bodies, and we have a problem with water bodies in Europe.
Very good. So you're sort of advocating a very holistic approach there, I see, Ludwig. So we're now going to go to Slido to see our questions from our participants. So this should be sending in their questions for the past number of minutes. So we'll go straight to the question that got the most votes. This is coming from Nicola from BITS, a member organization of IPIFF. For William. You've mentioned that you have looked into insects specifically as a source for omega fatty acids. Would you mind sharing what species of insects that you've used in the trials and whether the results were promising? William, what do you make of that question?
Yes, I'm more than happy to share. So the project was called Sustainable New Ingredients to Promote Health. We were working across India, Africa, and a couple other places who struggle to access omega-3s because we buy all and import it to feed our fish in the developed world. So with this, we were using a couple of species of lemna. So it's an aquatic microphyte, which is rich in ALA. So you produce a feed with that, and in carp and tilapia.
Are there other questions coming in? Because
EPA and DHA. So the species we were using within that project were black soldier fly for the lemna plant species, and then kelp flies, whose name I don't know the Latin name, I'm sorry, for more calciferous seaweed materials, which were also actually rich in EPA and DHA. If that answers the question.
Thank you, William. William, you're proving quite popular here in the question front, but I'm aware that you actually have to leave for another virtual event. So we'll try another question to you. What would be the impact of zero food waste systems in countries' economies? Now, that's a big question. And that's coming in, pardon me, William, that's coming in from David, who is a consultant in novel proteins.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, you know, we waste 1 in 4 calories at a global level. You know, we're 33% is the stated figure, but I'd probably say it's a bit closer to 40% when you look at global food waste. I don't have the figure, but we're into trillions of dollars. You know, there's 80-something million hungry people in the world. That food waste is enough to feed everybody. So I have absolutely no issue with the problems that solving food waste would bring us. In fact, I welcome that challenge over, you know, the global impacts and the social impacts as well of, you know, poverty and wasted food and, you know, food security. Because on many levels, yes, we're talking about an industry, but, you know, insects is a global movement. It's a global answer to a lot of our issues. So it should be recognised in that space very much so.
Sure. And as you say, it's a moral and an ethical obligation. I mean, it's horrendous, as you say, 1/3 of household waste being dumped. I mean, that's just a sin in this day and age when so many people go hungry. Last question for you, William, again the B word. After Brexit, does Scotland allow food waste as feeding substrates for insects?
I mean, our thinking around that is there's really, you know, we're probably going to be looking at 2 separate value chains. For example, Scottish salmon you know, it's sold as label rouge, it's, you know, it's a high welfare, it's high quality. Nobody really wants to have the conversation with you. But it's a lot easier to sell somebody this salmon was fed on insects, which were fed on organic, you know, vegetable pre-consumer substrates. Is a lot easier to sell somebody than this was fed on catering waste. So we see it as part of the solution, really. But potentially, you know, there's another conversation to be had about a second value chain where, you know, the protein might not be the key product. You know, you might be looking at frass, you might be looking at oils to feed supplements or biodiesel or AMPs or any other amazing functions that they do. But we recognise the EU as our key customer for a lot of our products here in Scotland, and we, personal opinion, will be continuing to align with the standards at the EU level.
Sure, and I suppose that's the direction of travel that the Brexit negotiations are going in. Dr. William Clark, I understand that you've got another event, so we won't keep you. I just wanted to thank you for taking part. And just if you want to give a plug again for your virtual event on November 26th, remind us again of the details.
Yes, please do. So the 26th of November, I'll get you the right date. It's a free event. Some of the protein strategies we mentioned, we've got people from those regions who worked within the strategies talking about, you know, where they came from, how they were developed. We've got people from Scottish agriculture and aquaculture talking about, you know, what that would look like within the Scottish context. Today we're looking at insects. The next time we're looking across some of the other sustainable proteins. But the whole thing is looking to understand the opportunities and benefits that more strategic approach to enabling these alternative proteins and the circular economy and resource efficiency and everything else can deliver.
Okay, William, well, you're free to go now because I know you have another event. So thank you very much for joining us here for the IPIFF online webinar. So thank you very much, William. Lovely talking to you, and till the next time. So the next question coming in goes to Valentina Massa. Is there, in your opinion, a type of former foodstuff that is currently not used as feed for other livestock, but might be suitable for insects? And that comes in from Nicola from the VITS organization. Valentina, would you like to take that one?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nicholas. Well, as I know, fruits and vegetables are already used as a form of foodstuff destined for insect farming. So they can be ready to use ingredients. Not talking about form of foodstuff, but talking about food that can be used suitable for insects. So of course, it's talking about products containing meat and fish. We already talked before with Madame Juliker, but we need to have some safety assessment from ESSA and the legal framework prepared for this kind of topic. So as long as I know, the vegetal former foodstuff like fruits and vegetables are useful, and I know also some part of bread and biscuits already are used in the feed farming. Of course, it depends on the kind of insects and the formula. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Valentina. Let's go next to the next question. I'm just looking through, a number of them were actually for William. Let's scroll through and see if we have something else. Another one for you, Valentina, if you don't mind, from Dominique, who is an insect enthusiast. And the question is how to make sure the traceability of former foodstuffs to ensure safe use for feeding of insects. So this goes back to the idea of authorization and traceability. To make sure that it is safe for insects and potentially entering the human food supply chain. So Valentina, you're obviously an expert on that. What do you say?
Thank you. Well, I welcome this question. We have an expertise of decades. We already said about this. We are producing feed under the current feed law and delivering feed ingredients for livestock. And so traceability is one of the mandatory topics we have to deal with. So we have all established systems, many of the case in digital way to assure the traceability of the product coming in and where they are destined. So no matter about the traceability.
Okay, Valentina, let's go to the next Slido question, and I'm just going to scroll through now to see if we have perhaps, scroll through, continue. Next one. Okay, let's just read it first. Insect frass can be fed to livestock in some non-EU countries. What are the possibilities in now and in the future to allow this in the EU? Ludwig, you might take that one. What do you say to that?
I can take it.
Ludwig, can you? Yeah.
I'm not,
do you mind taking it?
Yes. Do you hear me already, or?
Yes, perfectly, Ludwig. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So I take that. No problem. We have a number of such questions. What could be used feedstock, and of course, as you remember, or as you may remember, the BSE crisis several years ago. It's quite a long time ago already, but of course, regulators are careful with allowing different ingredients as a feedstock. So I would not see a quick fit for that. Of course, every ingredient that you may consider as a feedstock has to be first. There has been an interest group for it. Second, it needs to be considered by DG Santé, and last but not least, it needs to be assessed by the European Food Safety Agency. So I wouldn't exclude it, but you have to be patient if you wait for that. So please do not consider for your business purposes to use it in the near future.
Absolutely. As you say, the regulatory process is quite a cumbersome process here in the European Union. And this is a big question, as you say, with hints and shadows of the BSE crisis from the 1990s. Thank you for that, Ludwig. I'll turn now to Christopher Atkinson, a question from Tilly Javis. With the climate and biodiversity emergencies we face right now, how can we ensure the insect sector is not greenwash? Risks include feed that supports unsustainable industrial livestock, high energy use on farms, insect welfare. What do you say to that, Chris?
Oh, so the easy answer to that from me is to ensure that we see an increase in insect production, insect use in the context of an increase in organic farming. So the organic farming system has to be balanced, and industrialized livestock systems don't fit well within the organic system. That's not the direction of travel within organic. So if the growth in insects can be in parallel and in tandem with the growth in organic, and of course the farm to fork strategy envisages that will be the case, then hopefully we can avoid that kind of greenwash. And there are definite downsides and potential threats. Tilly also mentions energy use. So we want to see lots of energy to produce high temperatures might be needed to produce insects in, and we'd always want to see the use of waste heat or renewable energy for that. And Tilly does raise the insect welfare issue as well. I think that we always have to bear this in mind. There's a tendency for people to think that insects are small machines, and they're not. And there's increasing science around their wants and needs, and we need to take account of that as well.
Okay, Chris, I might ask you a question, just something that came up during Sabine Jülicher's presentation, indicating that it's important for organic aquaculture to keep pace with this overall target for organic agricultural land. Where are we with organic aquaculture? Is it moving at pace?
So organic aquaculture is still quite small, and the number of species involved, particularly in Western Europe, are not particularly large. Organic aquaculture is quite a big player, though, on the global stage. So, the organisation I represent today, IPIFF Organics Europe, is the regional body of a global organisation, and there's lots of aquaculture production takes place outside of Europe, and insects could play a role in producing feeds for them. And a lot of those aquaculture projects are very important in that they provide livelihoods for people in remote, rural, peripheral areas. But actually, even within Europe, aquaculture production supports livelihoods in those sorts of areas. So William was speaking from Scotland, and organic aquaculture is definitely on the increase in Scotland, and that is largely salmon production, which is a challenging sector. That's carnivorous fish, and we would like to see that they're not contributing to the capturing of marine ingredients to produce their feeds. We have an order of preference for feeds for them, which looks at using byproducts and waste from food processing. But insects could probably take the place of some of those marine ingredients and probably increase the quality of the food and feed that we're providing for those salmon.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is from a PhD candidate student in the US studying plant biology, Karine. It's aimed at Valentina. Valentina, how are your partners benefiting from participation financially? Are they saving on waste removal, or are they able to sell the food losses? If sold, how is it evaluated for sale, and how will we best motivate businesses to do the same? Do you have a response to that?
Let me read again.
Yes, it's quite an in-depth question coming from a potential doctorate. So
okay.
Take your time, Valentina.
Well, basically, we buy the former foodstuff because they have a product status, a feed ingredient status. Sometimes we take it with some money back for the service of the transportation when the value is really low. But mostly of the case, we pay for them, and then we process them, and then we sell the feed ingredient as any other feed stakeholder. Not waste status, not pay to receive the products, as long as I know. Maybe in some cases, in some few cases, in some countries, but in Italy, absolutely we pay for that. And how is it evaluated for sale? It depends on the market, of course. Normally, it's compared at nutrient level with crops, and at nutrient and the balance with the economic market we have. Of course, it depends on the process we made, on the durability of the product, and of course on the animal it is destined. So it's hard to say a proper value, but I can express you the method of evaluation. How will the best motivate business to do the same? I think transparency and communication will be the key. We are working in a sustainable way, and in the circular economy principle, even before the circular economy definition was made. Maybe we should find in the final products that can be meat, milk, cheese, or insects. The carbon footprint, and valorize where the sustainable ingredients are used in order to make the consumer easier to choose what is more sustainable.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Valentina, and thanks to Karine for tabling that question. Wishing you every success with your PhD doctorate. And perhaps the last question comes in from our participant, one of our participants in Morocco, Mehdi Algi. Apologies for pronunciation. A question I might put to Ludwig. Can we imagine major insect production as per area and countries able to act on world market prices, similar to what happened to date for cereals, soya meal? If so, what would they be, and in what sort of horizon in terms of, I suppose, timeline here? Ludwig, what do you say to this? Can we kind of foresee this in the years ahead, that we'd have something like world markets for insect production?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have my crystal ball with me today, but in general, I think, yes, there is a potential. There's a potential. I mean, I would consider the opportunity for insect farming quite open. I mean, there is no specific requirement that you have in terms of climate, in terms of you have feedstock available almost everywhere in high income countries at least, but probably also in lower income countries. And I think if we decide, Europeans, within the farm to fork strategy and within our climate targets to go ahead, we have the chance to become global leaders for insect farming in Europe. I would not say, or I would not sort out one specific country, but of course, those countries that are strong in agriculture already will have certain advantages. You also see from Bas Drucker's presentation that there were front runners, early movers in terms of regulatory consideration, like France and Germany, and later on the Netherlands and some other countries. So I think, yeah, we have an opportunity. We should go for it. We have a huge potential for having high value proteins, and it is worth a joint effort in Europe.
Thank you for that, Ludwig. I might just go to one question that's popping up from Christina, who is a master's student, and it's an interesting question. Is the impact of entomologists important? And if yes, in which way can they involve and be useful? That's a question for all, but I'm going to put it specifically to Chris, if you don't mind. That's an interesting point of view. The influence, I suppose, or the input of entomologists. What do you say to that, Chris?
Yeah, I think there's a great need for input from entomologists. Insect production is quite new, and a lot of the science around what their needs are and how to produce them successfully is in its infancy. So we need entomologists to be involved. We don't want to run into problems that could have easily been foreseen. I'm sure that when we start to scale up production, we may run into issues that haven't been apparent in pilot phases. So we need entomologists on board, and as Bas said, we will be developing organic rules, and we need to make sure that they reflect the concerns that entomologists may have and take advantage of the expertise that they can offer.
Excellent. As you say, Chris, down the tracks, when we scale up, as you say, production, there could be a few surprises that we would like to prevent at all costs. So thank you for the question, Christina, and excellent response from Chris. Now, I'm conscious of time, ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to wrap this session up right here. I would like to thank the panelists once again for this lively and interesting debate. Dr. William Clark from Zero Waste Scotland, Chris Atkinson, IFOAM, Valentina Massa, and last but by no means least, Mr. Ludwig Herrmann. So a very warm thank you from all of us here at IPIFF. I would now like to invite Adriana Casillas, who is the IPIFF Vice President, to join the debate. And maybe you could provide us, Adriana, with some of your initial reactions after this very lively panel debate, and of course the two previous policymakers from this morning's session. So welcome, Adriana, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, estimated participants and honorable officials from European and national institutions, dear representatives of European stakeholders, associations, and academia too, and of course, dear friends. We wish to thank you for your active participation in today's workshop. As we hear from the distinguished speakers and panelists, the transition towards more sustainable food systems requires concrete actions all across the food production value chains. So today, through your participation, the insect farming community from European and beyond expressed its commitment to making a bolder contribution on this matter. Notably, we should explore further possibilities to upcycle underused streams from the agri-food chains, and recent evidence from the academic work on the safe use of former foodstuff containing meat and fish as insect substrate could play a key role in unlocking opportunities offered by the EU legislation. So in parallel, we should also remind ourselves about the urgency to support the post-pandemic recovery. And here, the inspiration from the EU Green Week theme, a new beginning for people and nature, it is very important because it encourages to protect biodiversity and tackle biodiversity loss by working closely with our farmers, provide concrete solutions for organic farming and organic agriculture, where insects will play an important role as a valuable input in feed products or as a fertilizing product online. On this subject, the International Platform of Insects for Food and Feed remains in close collaboration with the European institutions, and in our capacity as representatives of European insect farming, we will support the development of robust and viable standards for the organic certification of insect farming activities. Last but not least, as we hear from the speakers who intervened today, 2050 EU's objective to reach climate neutrality is not so distant in the future. The seed we are planting now will be harvested in a couple of years, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, who knows. But it means that we have to pave the way for innovation in agriculture and support future-oriented solutions, such as insect farming. A close collaboration with other committed stakeholders, academic and policy making will allow us to tackle the most pressing challenges of food production. So I want to thank again the really nice presentation that you made before, and of course I'm here to answer any questions you could have. And I wish to thank you once again for the active participations in today's event, and on behalf of the IPIFF and its 71 members, I look forward to seeing you very soon in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adriana, and thank you for those closing remarks. And I think you would agree that it was a very lively discussion. We learned a lot. Certainly from my point of view, I feel very well informed, having followed the policymakers and the four panelists. So we're going to wrap it up there. I would like to thank everyone for taking part today, to the IPIFF team and the very technically able Constantin and Alice who are with me here at HQ. And to all of you for your very lively participation. Until we all meet again, take care.